Okay, good afternoon all. My name is David Byrne. I'm a GP and a lecturer in the Royal College of Surgeons. On behalf of our co-authors, I would like to present the results of our systematic review looking at medications, valsartan, in patients with heart failure, which specifically used clinical study reports in a methodology. So, just very briefly, chronic heart failure is a very common disease, and people with heart failure can have a markedly impaired quality of life. And they've been shown to have high palliative care needs similar to patients with cancer. Key management goals are improving symptoms, quality of life, and survival. This medication, also known as Entresto, is a relatively new medication licensed for use in heart failure, including advanced heart failure. It's very expensive. And for any medication, particularly in vulnerable patients, it's important that all treatments are evidence-based, cost-effective, and that all available evidence is used in their decision-making regarding the medication. So this systematic review specifically incorporates additional sources of information from clinical trials for this medication. These are clinical study reports, and they are documents submitted by a pharmaceutical company to a regulator, for example, the European Medicines Agency, and they provide more detailed information on clinical trials, and they have additional information on outcomes such as quality of life. So for this study, our objectives were from the point of view of evidence in heart failure to identify all available evidence, including quality of life outcomes for this medication for patients with chronic heart failure. And in terms of research methods, then to compare the efficacy from the meta-analysis using the outcome data from conventional sources, i.e. publications, with these other documents, clinical study reports. We performed the systematic review using the Cochrane Handbook. We looked at randomized control trials of adults with chronic heart failure taking either the medication Entresto or the active comparator. And key quality of life outcomes we looked at were NYHA functional class, KCCQ score, which is a specific quality of life score in heart failure, and EQ5D. So sources of information were from conventional publications and trial registries and these additional sources of information. We first performed a random effects meta-analysis using data from the conventional sources, so publications and trial registries, and then we performed a sensitivity analysis which repeated the analysis using information from these clinical study report data as well as the other sources as well. Just very briefly, we found 15 trials, 33 journal publications, 9 registries, and we had 3 clinical study report documents. Most trials were of low risk of bias. And moving on to the results then. So for the overall evidence for this medication, we found that it reduces mortality, improves quality of life overall, but increased the risk of symptomatic hypotension. And of note, one of the outcomes was the information for it was only available in these clinical study report documents. For advanced heart failure, we found just one trial which included information on the use of this medication in patients with advanced heart failure, and this showed there were no differences between outcomes in these patients, and that 30% of the patients randomized to this drug stopped the medication due to tolerability. So looking at the impact of using these additional sources of information on outcomes, so for one quality of life score, using the data from these documents did provide additional trial information for one trial, which was not publicly available otherwise. So for this KCCQ score, we found that there was a difference in the meta-analysis between the two sources. And there was a reduction in magnitude overall. So using just the published information would actually have overestimated the quality of life effect for this medication, and using the additional information provided a more accurate assessment of the quality of life from this medication. So in conclusion, in terms of evidence for heart failure, overall this medication, valsartan, is an effective drug. It reduces mortality, reduces hospitalizations, and improves quality of life scores overall. However, it confers a greater risk of symptomatic hypertension. In advanced heart failure, there's limited evidence for this medication, but there's a suggestion of a limited benefit in this cohort as well. Then in terms of research methodology so these clinical study report documents are useful sources of additional information for researchers who may perform evidence synthesis for medications generally. This information may be information not available in publications for the trials. These documents can provide additional quality of life outcome data for medications and may provide additional data on subgroups, for example, more complete information on subgroups with advanced disease, for example. In this analysis, including information from clinical study reports, changed the effect estimate for quality of life, one quality of life score, suggesting the benefits of using these alternative sources of information to obtain more accurate results for the medication. And overall, this highlights the potential for implementation of this alternative research methodology for researchers. I'd like to thank the funders, HRB, as part of my collaborative doctoral award, and also my co-authors. Thank you. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, David.